if he doesn't see you for 3-4 months, he won't ask of you. He won't ask of you. Whenever he sees you, he won't be annoyed that you have not checked on him.
And you consider that a stellar quality in a leader?
Well, that was his nature. It was not a deliberate thing to slide people. You know, it was not a person who wanted to impose himself on anybody or who felt that you should recognize that he's around and he's a boss. He was not that kind of person.
Nigerians, many people knew him as Baba. You know, people just say Baba. You know, a stern figure, often seen as incorruptible. You also made reference to that. But you say he lived up to that perception across his years in office. Don't forget that even as a military head of state, you know, there was the missing 2.8 billion naira. Even Fela sang about it. As a civilian president too, we had many people who believe that the recovered loot were literally relooted because we didn't have proper accounts. Would you put that down to him or those around him?
It couldn't have been him. You see, like I said, he was a human being, and he was one person who was unobtrusive. Perhaps a weakness he had was his ability to effectively be able to manage people, particularly those under him who were involved in all kinds of, sleaze. But as one person, you could not trace any ill-gotten wealth for him. He was that kind of person over and above the general standard of morality. A lot of people did, like for instance, I am not happy that Emefiele stole so much. It was during his administration. But what one discovered was there were people around him who utilized the advantage of being close to him to do a lot of unholy things, including the fact that Emefiele got some people to use within his administration to take care of themselves illegally and against the general interest. I don't recall that there was a project called Anti-Corruption Crusade during the campaigns. I can't remember that. What I do know is the corruption thing had been there, and a lot of people were using it to campaign against his election at that time. Perhaps out of some concern, maybe he stepped it down. I don't know. I can't remember, let me say.
No, he said he was going to fight corruption.
I don't know. No.
That if we didn't kill corruption, corruption would kill Nigeria.
He said that, but I don't recall that in government we had any fight or any project against fighting corruption. Be that as it may, every government should, in good conscience, ensure that corruption is contained. What we do see is corruption went out of the wild, and a lot of things are still wrong in regard to corruption in our country as a nation. I can't.
So in your opinion, how do you think we can deal with this problem? Because we cannot move forward with the level of corruption that's, every now and then...
desperate diseases are by desperate means cured. Unless we have a leadership which is determined to, force corruption out of Nigeria, we will be using kid gloves to handle corruption.
Where are we going to get that leadership?
Well, God will provide. God is the only one we would pray to provide.
Because we had Mr. Anti-Corruption, Baba Megaskia.
Well, Megaskia, during the military regime, his combination with the then Tunde did the magic at that time. But I think because of the civilian...
But that was a crude military authoritarian methods. People being flogged.
Desperate diseases are by desperate means cured. If
are you recommending something like that, where you pack people, put them in jail?
It's not about packing people.
That they are guilty until proven innocent.
They will grow through the process of prosecution.
So how will this desperate measure work?
Well, it will work in the sense that you insist that everybody alleged of corruption must go through the process of prosecution.
We're not doing that now.
I don't see us doing that sufficiently. For instance, for now, there's no high-class case really about fighting corruption, except that we must be fair to say that EFCC is doing its bit. At least what has happened or what is happening to Emefiele is a case in point. The FCC is handling that, and it is my prayer that the political class will give EFCC all the powers that they require to fight corruption.
Correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm hearing, even though you're not saying it, is that as a politician that you are, having been in politics probably for over 40 years, you've seen a lot, and you've come to a point where you believe that through the conventional means of arresting people, taking them through the judicial process, and no, we cannot successfully fight and deal with corruption.
Well, there are procedures which must be followed.
But that's what we see every time. Still,
I don't think we are serious sufficiently in pursuing it. I have told you, for instance.
So please be specific. What would you like to see that you haven't seen?
EFCC must be more empowered.
More empowered?
Yes.
To do what?
To ensure that it fights corruption to a standstill. They know what to do if they have all the wherewithal. The ICPC must be empowered. The National Assembly itself must appreciate that it has a moral duty to stand on the side of the people to fight against corruption. All the things we hear about, all kinds of compromises must be done away with. Only yesterday I was reading something on social media about an official of the National Assembly who was complaining that certain elected officials were compromising them, were really preventing them from writing reports of, investigations and all of that. The National Assembly should, live up to the billing that it is there purposely brought in after we have had military regime where there was no legislature. If legislature is being brought in now, they are brought in because it is considered that there's need for people who check excesses of the executive. Let's
also talk about one major pillar of his administration in office, that's security. There are people who will argue that despite being a former general, once a general is always a general, he couldn't sufficiently deal with insecurity in the Northeast, in the Northwest, and even the rise of IPOP in the Southeast. What do you say to this?
In a civilian regime, you use civilian methods of doing things. You don't, because you have in a past military regime, use jackboot, to handle some of these things. So if you recall, I recall properly, that when Buhari came on board, he bought so many, aircrafts, fighter aircrafts for, the Northeast to fight, violence and all of that in the North. A lot of them were purchased. Of course, we also hear that...
We kept talking about Tucano, Super Tucano.
Super Tucano and all kinds of things. These were actually bought. So how they were used, we will have to ask the military. What happened to this Tucano? You see, in the Northwest, there's a different ball game in the Northwest. You have to look at the cause before you know what solutions to provide. The late Chief Emefiele once said, if you fail to train the children of the poor, they would ensure that your own children cannot sleep with both eyes closed. The northern banditry arose as a result of rebellion against the old order, because some of these warlords were interviewed, and they stated that, and essentially Fulanis, they said they were being oppressed by the leadership, the traditional leadership in the Northwest. How were they doing it? For all kinds of flimsy excuses, they get these Fulanis arrested, they get them in prison, they get them fined heavily. A lot of times their wives are also taken away from them. So they felt, why are they not as human beings as much as the ordinary households? So they had to rebel, they had to rise. It was a rebellion. And it was
a rebellion that they took their cattle into people's farms.
Well, that was not the reason for taking, according to those who were interviewed.
Including other parts of the country?
No, that's a new development.
The president then did not curtail this?
The funny thing about this cattle thing, I remember the Chief Adebayo, the then Minister of Agri, he had prepared a fantastic work plan to ensure that cattle were settled.
The cattle colony?
Cattle colony. But this was resisted.
It was a controversial one.
Why would it be controversial? Any new thing will...
Because the federal government was going to literally annex some people's land. And
if it had been done the way the Adebayo did it, it wouldn't have created any problem other than the fact that some vested interests in the North felt that they had a right to allow their cattle to graze. They called some cattle routes, they call some areas cattle routes, as if they were the owners of those lands. They ought to have limited those, land for ranch to the North, where these people came. But apparently, even in the North, the average Fulani man does not have land. It is the Hausas who are the landowners. And perhaps they were the ones who resisted the annexation of their land for cattle ranches.
So you don't think that former President Buhari mismanaged insecurity, especially given the...
No, it's not about managing insecurity. He had to rely on the military. In Northeast in particular, he had to rely on the military. Even in the Northwest, he had to rely on the police and all of that. How the thing backfired, I can't understand.